You know exactly what's happening. You ask for the basics and receive guilt. That is not love, it's training. If there were respect, you wouldn't need to beg. If there were consideration, you wouldn't feel indebted. If there were truth, there would be no manipulation. The situation is clear. Observe the facts. He does. Devalues, ignores, blames. And you. Yield, explain, distract, remain in the shadow of what should be light. There is no mystery. There is a cruel pattern. He keeps control while you seek justifications. You call it a relationship because dependency demands action. You accept the tiny because you fear the absence of what you consider important. The bond is maintained by your concession, not by force, but by your choice to continue. Those who control never explain, and you who waits justify the unjustifiable. When someone values, they act. When someone cares, they give space. The rest is just noise. If you need to request the obvious, you are already subdued. If you need to negotiate the minimum, you are already contaminated by skepticism. You are not imprisoned, you are conditioned. And remaining conditional is your decision. The truth is raw. Nothing changes because those who benefit have no interest in altering the dynamics. As long as you're available, he will continue in this cycle. You do not need more conversations. You do not need more empty promises. You need to decide if you will accept this reality. There is no comfortable ending here, only the need to interrupt the cycle. He will not change. The cost is yours. The reality has already been presented. You know that in the daily routine, small things transform into big barriers. You observe the inattentive look, the hurried response, the gestures that fail to reach what truly matters. Indifference is a constant, and you ask yourself, where did you lose control? He provokes, ignores, criticizes, and you dodge, try to fit in, justify. The cycle repeats without pause. That feeling that time is passing, but nothing changes. The weight is real. The wear accumulates like dust on a forgotten piece of furniture. It's hard to see, but you know it's there. And when someone asks about you, what do you say? The smile that hides the frustration, the superficial answers that cover up the emptiness, a foundation shaking while you pretend the building is solid. You have stories told to justify the choice of staying, sweetness in the words, but bitterness in the emotions. The fear of loneliness is stronger than the desire to leave. The other takes advantage of it. He plays games. Plays with your insecurities like someone playing with domino pieces. You try to keep everything standing, but a slight tap can knock down your fragile structure. You tell yourself that one day everything will change, that he will finally realize your worth. But the truth is, he doesn't need to realize anything. The system works for him. You are just a piece on the board. Why are you still here? You look into his eyes and see nothing. An empty space, a blank screen. He is not present, even when he is by your side. This is not love. It is dependence disguised. You cling to the crumbs, hopeful that they will become a feast. But what comes is just more pain. You want freedom, but still believe that captivity is comfort, a cold embrace that becomes familiar. Time passes and you adapt to this cruel pattern of submissive love. You forget what it is like to be desired. The laughter fades, giving way to tired sighs. The life you dreamed of seems like a distant echo. Meanwhile, he appears, absents himself, apologizes. And you wait, get disappointed, try to understand. It is a cycle that never ends. The cost is high. The daily grind consumes. And you, without realizing it, become a reflection of what you always wanted to avoid. A shadow of herself, living in a scenario not written by her. The responsibility for change is in your hands. The decision to leave this emotional labyrinth is yours. You can continue seeking normalcy within this chaos, or decide that the cost is already too high. The illusion that things will change only keeps you trapped in a past that won't return. The choice is simple: stay or leave. And the longer you wait, the deeper you sink into the quicksand of complacency. Now, look at your dreams. How many times have they been set aside? What do you truly desire? Not the fantasy of an ideal love, but the clarity of a future worth striving for. What would you do if you weren't afraid? If you knew that the only thing really holding you back is your own hesitation? The bond only exists because you sustain it. Once you realize this, the truth becomes undeniable. Standing still is also a decision, and this decision weighs on you. It covers your soul like a heavy cloak. What more do you need to see to understand that no one can do this for you? There are no more promises, just the raw, unvarnished reality. All your prayers and requests have already been answered. Now, it's time to look into the broken mirrors and accept that the reflected image is not the one you wished for. But it is yours. You have the necessary tools to rewrite the story. The life you yearn for will not be handed to you on trays forged of illusions. The cost is yours to bear, and the reality has already been presented. The wound does not heal by itself. You try to ignore it, cover it with improvised bandages and a forced smile. But the pain persists, like an insistent whisper echoing in your mind, reminding you that the wound is real. What you feel is not a phase, it's a chronic state. He acts, promises change, gives false hopes. And you pretend to believe, convince yourself of the possibility. The cycle becomes a grotesque dance, where the steps are choreographed by insecurity and the need for approval. You strive to fit into molds that were not made for you. Looking into his eyes becomes a test of endurance. The emotion is no longer what it used to be. Each encounter is a silent battle. Every word spoken lacks authenticity. He does not see you. He sees an extension of his own needs. Recognition is lost in the routine. You wonder how many times you had to sacrifice your being in the name of this distorted love. It's the small cuts, the daily wear and tear that create an invisible bleeding. There are those who feed on the light of others, sucking vitality with empty promises and furtive gestures, and you, without realizing it, contribute to your own darkness. A cycle of blind loyalty that reveals itself in every deafening silence. He does, ignores your feelings, prioritizes his own agenda. And you delay your desires, submit to the cloak of passivity. In this labyrinth, you lose yourself. In the search for validation, you build walls. Each brick is a memory, a moment when he was not what he promised to be. Each day is a reminder of how far you are from who you really want to be. His empty gaze is not a mere oversight, but a reflection of his choice not to see. He chooses not to see your disguised tears. The message is clear. You are optional, and this truth weighs heavily. For those who live on the edge, any gesture of attention becomes a product of consumption. You learn to barter your self-esteem. You trade smiles for crumbs of affection. When someone approaches, you project the hope that you will finally be seen. But this game has rules that only he knows. While you surrender to the promises of better days, reality insists on showing the opposite. He does. Criticizes your insecurities, condemns your reactions. And you withdraw, silence yourself, repair the damage. This is not love, it is manipulation. Every moment that should be celebrated turns into a burden. You observe how life passes by, like a movie without a soundtrack where emotions are muffled. Time does not wait. The hours drag on as you wonder when life became just a waiting game. You feel like a stranger in your own body, reliving memories that were never yours. It's a role that was not chosen. Small joys become impossible to reach. A phone call, a visit, a hug. All of it transformed into broken promises that don't hold up. What you once wished for so fervently now seems distant. The idea of true love is an echo that does not materialize. Reality imposes itself, and you find yourself in this cold and inhospitable scene. The other person may be physically present, but the emotional connection has dissipated. You are no longer the priority. You are a reminder of what could have been. Every day that goes by is a conscious choice to remain in this cycle. You observe the signs, but hesitate to act. The fear of the unknown becomes a comfortable whim. You would like to leave, but the idea of leaving everything behind brings unease. Loneliness is frightening, but more terrifying is continuing to endure a relationship that corrodes the soul. You cling to the fragments, believing that any trace of affection is still worthwhile. The feeling of abandonment is palpable, and you fear what will come after the breakup. Still, the decision must be made. The choice is yours. Stand still or move forward. The image reflected in the mirror demands honesty. You raise your voice. The internal struggle is fierce, but you begin to understand that the transformation will not come from outside. Freedom requires courage. Courage to face what lies ahead, to question if the pain is worth the price. Love should not be a transaction of concessions. It should be a space for growth, for unity. And when you finally decide to break the chains, the weight dissolves. A new perspective emerges. There's no guarantee of ease, but each step becomes an act of reclamation. You no longer need to sustain what doesn't serve you. The future is uncertain, but it is yours. You take on the responsibility with all your frailties. Stopping is a choice, but moving forward is the only way to truly live. And so you say goodbye to what is no longer necessary. The memories remain, but the pain becomes less intense. Reality, raw and unfiltered, does not need to be feared. It is liberating. The story is not yet over, but now you are the author. Reality has been presented. Freedom is an ambiguous concept. The idea of letting go and facing life without the weight of the past may be seductive, but it brings with it a deep dread. Do you remember the security it represented? Even if that security was an illusion, it was a known place, a shelter disguised as comfort. Now you find yourself standing before the abyss. The fear does not only come from uncertainty, but from the possibility of failing again. Because repetition is familiar, failure is welcomed, while the new is frightening and unpredictable. In this emotional back and forth, you hesitate. He does. Watches you get lost in your own thoughts. Pretends to care, but deep down the absence is palpable. And you become an expert at disguising your frailties, hiding the internal storm behind a rehearsed smile. You turn inward, believing that self-compassion can heal what was shattered. But it is a trick. You project questions in moments of silence. Why am I not enough? What is wrong with me? And every time these questions echo, you sink a little deeper. He does, remains distant, observes the cycle. And you try to show that you are fine, that you can handle it. The reality is that you dissolved in the expectations of others and forgot how to feel whole again. You may have built walls around you, but they are made of insecurities and fears, not strength. The resilience you display is illusory. The walls become prisons. You understand that you need to get out, but the exit seems as distant as stars in a polluted sky. Meanwhile, life goes on. You find yourself in superficial interactions with people who barely know your story. Empty conversations, laughter that echoes into a void, glances that do not recognize the battle raging inside you, and the feeling of being lost in the crowd grows. Loneliness transforms into a shield, a defense against the pain you no longer want to feel. But the reality is that what you fear is not solitude itself, but the recognition that, even in the presence of another, you do not feel seen. He acts, ignores your attempts to communicate, and you convince yourself that it is your fault, that you need to try harder. You revisit moments, redo dialogues in your mind, believing you might find the answer. But the truth is that the answer is not out there. It is inside you, and you wonder how many times you will surrender before claiming what belongs to you. Love should not be an unequal exchange, and you begin to realize that you got lost along the way. It has become a shadow of what it could have been, not what it truly is. You take small steps, slow, hesitant. Each decision to look at yourself is an act of courage. You see yourself not just as a victim, but as someone who deserves more than the fragility of a distorted love. A love that was never love, just disguised dependence. The nights are long. Thoughts invade the darkness like shadows dancing in the moonlight. You reflect on your journey, and the painful memories begin to mix with a new hope. The idea of rewriting your own story becomes increasingly vivid. Each tear shed is not a sign of weakness, but of resilience. What you desire now is not simply love. It is autonomy. It is the ability to say, enough. And you realize that you no longer need to submit to these standards. What he does or does not do does not define you. You are more than a reflection of the expectations projected onto you. The days pass, and the idea of freedom becomes palpable. There is no more room for illusions. You face reality with new eyes. Yes, it can be painful, it can be frightening, but it is yours. The emotional cost you have paid so far has been too high, and it is time to reverse this situation. When you finally allow yourself to feel anger, that anger becomes fuel. It paves the way for transformation. Each moment of frustration turns into clarity. You begin to understand that change only occurs when you decide that you are strong enough to leave behind what no longer serves you. The internal dialogues change. I am not enough transforms into I am everything I need. You begin to see each step forward as an achievement. The small daily victories feed your strength. Before, the fear of being alone paralyzed you. Now, the idea of finding and rediscovering yourself becomes the new drive. And so, as life moves forward, You realize that you no longer need crumbs. The pieces begin to fit together. Reality has already been presented, and the mirror you faced so many times now reflects an image of determination. The cycle breaks. You will not accept less than you deserve. Liberation does not come from external actions, but from an internal choice. Life still unfolds, full of uncertainties, but now you are in control. And each day becomes an opportunity to reaffirm your freedom. Reality has already been presented.